Hello, and welcome to the Once More with Feeling podcast again, episode 21. This week we have on a friend of mine, Andrew Carter. Really interesting cat. We had a really fun conversation. I actually just looked at the time before I wanted to record this intro, and we recorded this thing. It's a bit of a longer one. It's definitely a beast, and it's because we were talking about so much fun and interesting stuff that literally we both got a little bit lost on the time and just kept going. So many things that were really hit home for me. We talked a little bit about mental health and also just specifically ADD. We both have ADD and we both have lived with it our whole lives, and just talking about what that's like. He is a writer and director, primarily director, and he is directing a bunch of different projects. He has a couple that are already out. I have links to everything that he's working on or has worked on or that is available as of right now in the description below. But I just wanted to do a little intro for him. He has a podcast out right now called Is It Still Good?, where he reviews things from our childhood to see if it's still good. One of them was Goosebumps. Another one was Happy Meals. Really anything under the sun that comes from our childhood. And I think that was really funny. It's actually really well put together and funny. Among being a director, and we talked a lot about directing and writing and the collaborative process of creating in general, and how to keep on a good mindset of creating and realizing where it needs to be collaborative and realizing where you should actually get your hands in the mix and do it yourself, and both humbling yourself to understand that and also just bringing the right people in. And I think him talking from a director's standpoint is actually really interesting because that's basically what directors do. I mean, they capture the shot through the lens of their eye, but some of the other stuff, I don't want to give too much away, but basically a lot of it is bringing in the right people. And that was very applicable to many different art forms, but especially film. We talked a lot about movies and film and things like that during this one too. So without further ado, Andrew Carter, ladies and gents. See ya later. Peace.
Once more with feeling.
I like it. I like that you're adding keys to it. I like that you picked an instrument.
Yeah. It's kind of like keys or like just squiggly hands. It's my dad sometimes when he waves, he's like that's how he waves
like this?
Sometimes. Like that.
Casting a spell.
That's where I get it from.
That's good, man. No, you picked something and you stuck with it. I like it. Yeah, most people.
You gotta commit.
Yeah, my dude. Yeah, no, we were talking about your podcast before we actually started rolling, but
yeah,
dude, I think I really like the concept of it, like just bringing things back from the past and seeing like how they actually hold up.
Thanks, man. Yeah, we like it too. We think it's a fun way to just explore memories and tap into nostalgia while also trying to be genuine, because like some things like we just did, as you said, you saw the Goosebumps one, and like as you can tell, we did not enjoy them at all.
Yeah.
And it's like that's the thing is like Goosebumps was a perfect representation of what our show is about. And for everybody listening, our show is called Is It Still Good?
Yeah.
And it's just a podcast where we revisit things from our past and from our childhood and decide if they hold up as adults. And Goosebumps was great because whenever you hear Goosebumps, people's eyes light up. If you're a kid in the 90s, you're, I love Goosebumps. Oh man. Yeah. But I stand by these words. I defy any grown adult to tell me that they still love it now. Like if anyone tells me that they love it, I'll be like, when was the last time you read a book?
Exactly.
Because they're not bad. They're just, there's nothing there for adults. There's no stakes. There's nothing in there that is for memorable, there's nothing scary. It's just not, it's strictly for kids.
Yeah. It was Stakes, I think, is a good one because you guys were also talking about one of my favorite writers, Stephen King, on there. You just finished it, right?
Yeah, he's my favorite, probably my favorite writer.
Yeah.
Actually, I mean, I've been the thing with me is that I have ADD, so sitting down and reading a book is very, very hard for me.
Yeah.
But I've luckily discovered Audible, and so I've just been cruising through a bunch of books on there. And last year I listened to 3 Stephen King, maybe 4, but from what I remember, 3. I listened to It.
Oh yeah.
The Shining and Dr. Sleep.
Oh, great.
And
nice.
They were all great. And I think he's so good at writing characters that have not only so much going on, but are also like have so much going on internally, but are dealing with a lot externally. And he makes it seem effortless. And it's not too much. It's not convoluted.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could argue, It is like 1,200 pages.
Yeah,
so I guess someone could argue like that's a beast, but
it didn't feel because I read it as well, and you're among good company because I have ADD too, and I can't sit and read a book. And
dude,
I love.
When were you diagnosed?
When I was a kid, like maybe 10 or 11. So
okay, yeah, I was like 9. Did you take any medicine for it when you were a kid?
So they tried to put me on meds. Like I say that like they were strapping me down, but like my parents were like, okay, let's let's see if this helps or whatever.
You're like, they tried, man, but I said fuck them.
They tried to make me go to rehab, but I say, 11 years old sing. No, but it just didn't work, dude. Like I went. My mom, God bless her, because she saw right away that it didn't really work out for me because. Yeah. Basically, they put me on one dose, and I slept all day. Literally, like the whole day I slept.
Which medicine was it? Do you remember?
So young. I think one of them was Ritalin. That one probably wasn't Ritalin, but yeah, dude. So I like slept the whole day, and then the next one, they're like, okay, well that one doesn't work for him. Let's put him on this one. And I remember, dude, we were walking through a grocery store. And I remember this vividly. We were walking through the grocery store, and my mom, I could tell, like, she had just had about enough of me, like, talking. Because I was a mile a minute just talking. And I remember I looked her in the face, and I said, Mom, like, I know that I'm being annoying, but I just can't stop. And I remember verbally saying that to her, and I was like, wow. Yeah, and so after that, she was like, I just don't think it's going to work for him. Or, like, maybe we're just, And so we did this behavioral therapy thing. It was pretty nuts. Have you ever done anything like that or?
Yeah, like CBT, like cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see a therapist right now. I've been in therapy more or less since I was like 15.
Okay.
Just because I think it's healthy, man, and especially growing up. Growing up in the 90s when ADD was first. Breaking on the scene, if you will. Some people didn't really know what it was, and other people, like, if they had heard of it, they wrote it off. I remember a kid said to me, I think I was in 7th grade, because I was, I went to a boarding school for kids with learning differences, like specifically for kids with ADD and dyslexia for all 4 years of high school. And I think I took Ritalin for some parts of when I was like 9 or 10, and then I took Adderall pretty much all through high school. Yeah. And I gotta say it did help. There were side effects like you lost your appetite for a little bit, which was tough. Yeah. But other than that, it did help me stay focused and get my work done.
Yeah, it definitely works for certain people. Like it's just case by case.
It did work I can't speak for everyone, but it worked for me.
Yeah.
And I understand if it doesn't work for everyone, because it's kind of a lot to ask and a lot to put on a kid, especially if they don't really know like what's going on. But I definitely just like, as much as like I'm a huge fan of Tom Cruise, like as an actor, I think he's awesome. But I totally disagree with his psychiatry standpoint. I just think he's like dead wrong about it, because he's very against like Ritalin and Adderall and everything, and I'm just kind of like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Well, he also believes a lot of things that are pretty intense,
Yeah, they're fucking wild. But I remember like oh god, that was such a tangent. We were talking about therapy, and I said I've been in therapy since I was like 15. I remember I was telling a story about a kid in 7th grade. So the kid in 7th grade, I remember he was like he said something that was like, ADD it's a bullshit excuse for not doing your work or something like that.
Yeah.
Like right after I finished telling him that I had it. So I was like 13 and confiding in this kid. And then he like threw that back in my face and I was like, this guy sucks. And it was one of those things where like when you're a kid, you know, when you have friends and your friends are friends with this person and like they all love this guy, but like you and he just don't click.
Oh yeah.
And that was me and this kid. I was just like, I don't fucking get along with like this guy sucks. I just have nothing to say, nothing in common. Like we tried the whole play date bullshit. Like I went over and just like I could just tell I was like annoying his family. I like annoyed his little sister from like I don't even, I think she had like these like goofy slippers and I like tried them on as a joke and she was like, stop. I was like, God, lighten up. And then like we were talking about music and he was like, my favorite band's the Grateful Dead, and I was like, I'm
this
not
isn't
into
gonna
them
work
at all. And I was just like, this is not gonna work. Like
it's even worse when you're kids though too, because it's like you gotta wait for your mom to pick you up, dude. You don't have an out. You can't just turn the key to the car and get out. Oh, you know what, I forgot my socks at home. Like you gotta just wait for your mom.
Yeah, you do. You're stuck there.
So you gotta make it work.
I think we lived pretty close to each other, so I think I might have walked home. I don't remember, but I don't think I just like left after that. I think later on I was like, oh, this guy sucks, and we don't click, and it's fine. Yeah. But when you're that's something that's always been a struggle for me. Even when I'm an adult, it's like you want to get along with people, but if you're not clicking, you're not clicking. And I think I've gotten to a place. I think after college is when I finally, you know, to an extent, again, I still sometimes struggle, but like there's just some people you're just not going to get along with and it's fine. Like, you know, and you don't have to go out of your way to be like a complete asshole, but at the same time you don't have to talk to these people.
Yeah, well, it's like we're all built differently, dude, and it's one of those things where it's like it's not even like you hold hate for them in your heart. It's just like we're not riding the same wave, you know, and that's okay, you know. And it's like, I know what you mean though, but you like because I don't know about yourself. I can speak for myself, but I tend to be kind of like a people pleaser, and I like to like when I host, I like to make sure everyone's okay and happy, and so something in me always makes me want to feel like, well, if they don't like me, there's got to be something wrong with me. And then a long time ago, just kind of let that go, man. Where it's just like you can't hold that. Like not everybody's gonna like you. And I remember there's this one kid. Sorry, real quick. There was this one kid.
No, go for it.
When I was in college, and it wasn't even. It was like it was like freshman year of college, but I was like 17. And there was this kid, and I would play gigs. I'm a musician, and so
nice.
I would play gigs. Thanks. You don't know if I'm good though. I could be terrible.
Oh, nice. Are you good? Yeah. It's such a funny follow-up question.
Nice. You any good?
Nice. How good are you?
Do you suck? This isn't gonna work. We're not gonna get along. No, but I remember we had a mutual friend, and this guy. I remember he finished his set, and he came off stage. And he did really good. He was a drummer, and like he had really fast hands. And I remember I complimented him. I was like, "Hey man, like you got the fastest hands in the West. You're really good." And he was like, "Yeah, whatever." And I was like, "Whoa!" And I had seen him before, and we had talked a couple times, and I never remembered anything like contentious. And I remember I talked to one of his friends. And this is when I realized I'm like, dude, like you just can't please everybody, and it's just gonna be what it's gonna be. Because I talked to one of his friends, and he was like, God, I forgot this kid's name. I probably shouldn't out him on here, anyways. But let's just say Joe. Okay, let's just say Joe. He's like, yeah, Joe got really high one night, and he convinced himself that you're his worst enemy. And I'm like, what?
So he like woke up and it persisted.
Apparently, like he got so high. He was like, "Yeah, that RENE guy, like he's just my fucking nemesis now." And like that's
weird. And it's also weird that happens in college. Like it shouldn't happen in college. Like high school, I understand that's just what happens. But college, it's like, come on, grow up. And when you go to a college that's somewhat like a high school, which I did too, it's tough because it's like, oh man, this shit's happening all over again. And what's important for people like us that are people pleasers to remember, my English teacher and my dorm parent in boarding school said this. Not only can you not please everybody? We also can't like who we don't like. You just can't like everybody. Like that. I think I know what you mean, because I'm the same way of like, if someone doesn't like me, I'm like, what did I do?
Right.
What did I say? How did I make them feel? Oh God. But after a certain point, you're just not going to vibe with everybody.
Yeah.
Like I know we know each other through people at Paramount. I definitely didn't vibe with everybody there.
Oh yeah.
But I didn't get in fights with people. It's just, you just kind of go your separate ways, and you just don't really engage. I wouldn't say that I like had a ton of enemies, but there were plenty of people that I did like, but there were also people that I was like, we're not gonna hang out. We're not gonna see eye to eye, and it's fine. And I think that's because you get to a certain age where you're just like, and I will say, I think getting married has helped that with that too. And also my wife is
you don't like it very
really much. Good at not. What'd you say?
So you don't like it very much? Just
I'm like, and also my wife, she sucks, and she's amazing. She's my favorite person, and she's very good at not overthinking. Like she's the opposite. She's not like, but she's not someone who's like, oh, if they don't like me, it's their problem, fuck them. Right. It's more just, she's very at peace with like, I'm gonna like who I'm gonna like, and I'm also not going to like who I'm not going to like. And that's fine. She doesn't beat herself up. She's not someone who I think needs or desires a million friends or wants to be friends with everybody. But she's also very easy to get along with. She has never, it's funny, we've been together almost 4 years now. I don't think she has ever come home from like hanging out with friends or at work or whatever and ever complained about like another person being like, ugh, really? Driving me crazy. Whereas I definitely go to her with drama, but I'm also like a drama queen a little bit. I love gossip. She made fun of me in our vows. She was like, I know you love drama and gossip. And I was like, yep, that's true. Like,
that's amazing.
It's 100% true. Her vows were so funny.
Yeah.
She goes, so we got married in August of 2018 originally at the courthouse in Norwalk because Zoe's an immigrant. She was born in England and raised in England and Canada. So we wanted, we love each other and we were going to get married anyway, but we were like, let's get going on the green card because the situation is fucked right now. Yeah. So we had our, we got married legally then, but we had our wedding ceremony and celebration in December of 2019. Yeah. Which was good timing considering everything going on. Damn. Because our original date was July 25th in like 4 days or whatever it is.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, we were originally going to get married then, but we got it because we got engaged in July of 2018, and we were like, let's do it on the same day because it's a Saturday 2 years from now. But then we were like, wait, 2 years? Yeah, that's such a fucking long time to plan a wedding. And I think even my mom was like, are you sure? Are you sure you want to plan that long? And I think we looked at each other and we were like, no. Yeah. And so we got married in December. And in our vows, Zoe said, she opens them with, Andrew, we've been married for over a year now, and I figured it's about time for your yearly review, which was hilarious. Yeah.
That's amazing.
She was like just zinger after zinger. And I'm usually the goofy one, and mine were like very sincere.
Oh, that's amazing.
And afterwards she was like, were mine too silly? And I was like, no, yours were perfect. Yeah. Like,
she met you where you're at, though. She knew that you would appreciate the comedy, and she did it. That's cool. Great.
But yeah, man, I think for people pleasers, it's like you also have to remember that like you're not going to vibe with everyone either. Yeah. Like you're not going to. Not only are you not going to please everybody, not everybody's going to please you either. Yeah. And it's hard for people pleasers to kind of like have self-care.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, and I think that it's one of those things too where it's like what I think one thing that helped me through a lot of that was just realizing that like I'm still working on some of that stuff, but realizing that it's like just because you're not vibing with somebody doesn't mean you don't like them or think that they're important or that they don't like have a purpose in this world somewhere. It's just maybe not in your life.
Yeah, dude, I struggle with that too. Because, like the weirdest thing for me. Yeah. And it's dissipated the older you get or the older I've gotten, but it definitely is a weird thing for me when I don't like someone, but then people that I like do like them. I'm like, how the fuck do you like this person?
That's
like,
interesting.
Why
I never
do
thought
you,
of that.
like, this guy sucks, or like this,
Yeah.
you know, like I felt that way like since college. There was one dude in college, a specific motherfucker who like the minute I met him, I was like, this guy sucks.
Yes.
Like, he is a clown. He's a like slimy bastard. And then like we ended up in the same fucking fraternity, and like guys that I knew and respected were buddies with him. And I was like, I don't get it. Like, why are you guys friends with him? And it took me a long time to just be like, dude, he's just not my cup of tea, and that's okay. Yeah. But at the same time, even to this day, I'm still like, I don't like, why do you like this guy? But again, that's just me. And I think you know what? You have to get to a place where it's that, because you'll drive yourself crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Overthinking it.
Yeah. You'll drive yourself fucking... You know that meme from like It's Always Sunny where Charlie has all the shit on the wall and he's like that, like a detective? Yeah. Like, that's what you'll turn into if you don't accept the fact that it's just like, hey, he's just not for me. It's like any movie that you watch or don't like. Like, I just watched a movie that's so beloved. Everybody has always talked about it for years. It's called Bull Durham. Have you seen Bull Durham?
No.
Movie from the 80s, a baseball movie. Kevin Costner, Susan Sarandon, and Tim Robbins. It's like... Everybody calls it like a classic. It's voted like the best sports film of all time. Like, I fucking couldn't stand it.
Amazing.
And I usually like to be like, I think I have decent taste, but for whatever reason, I was like, and usually I would be scratching my head and being like, what am I not getting? But I just watched it and was like, I'm not getting anything. I just don't like it.
Exactly.
It's just not for me. And that's it, period.
You know what's wild is, and you might like this, I don't know, because I'm apparently in the minority here, but I can't, like, I watched the movie Uncut Gems. Did you watch that movie?
Yeah, that was personally, that was my favorite movie of last year.
Couldn't fucking stand that movie.
Dude, I don't blame you. My mom,
I just couldn't do it.
I get it, man. That movie is so intense and so uncomfortable, and so it's so much yelling and it's kinetic. But to me, that's what I loved about it, because it introduced me to this world that I had never seen. I'm also a big Sandler fan. I met him once, and he was the nicest guy ever. Yeah, and I don't
even think his acting was bad in it, to be honest with you. I don't even think he did a bad job. Yeah, I think he did great.
I agree with you. I think he's amazing. But I also, that's another, I'm glad we brought him up, because I have such love for Sandler. Like, I grew up with his movies, and I'm so sick of people just bashing that guy.
No, I mean, listen,
he's fucking talented. Like, I don't care what anybody says. I think he's
sold out
talented
on a couple movies recently, but who the hell hasn't? And he's
like, I agree. Like,
you know, look, it's just,
I'm not going to sit here and defend like some of his Netflix stuff, because like, first of all, I've only seen like a handful of them, and what I've seen I haven't really liked. But the classics like Happy Gilmore and Billy Madison,
you kidding me? Yeah, amazing.
Big Daddy, The Wedding Singer, those are great. And like, but there's the stuff that he's done in dramatic territory, like Punch Drunk Love and Funny People, and now Uncut Gems. It's like, this guy can fucking, this guy's the real deal.
Yeah, he can do it. Yeah,
I loved Uncut Gems just because I thought it was just this new world. I thought it was directed brilliantly. I thought that it was. I also am a big fan of movies that when you watch them, you can tell immediately who's making them. Like, and the Safdie brothers, the guys who directed it, and they wrote it with Ronald Bronstein. Like, you can tell that those three guys, like, this is a Bronstein Safdie movie, and like, I don't know. I think that's very hard to pull off. And they fucking nailed it with that one. I don't know. I loved it. But I also completely understand. Like, I was bugging my parents for months to watch it, and they finally did. And my dad liked it a little bit more than my mom. He was like, I thought it was intense, but I thought Sandler was great. And my mom was like, I didn't like anything about it. Like, she just couldn't get into it. And my sister, I don't even think she's finished it, but she's just like, I'm not enjoying 1 minute of this.
Oh, yeah.
So what was it for you? Yeah, what was for you that you didn't like?
Yeah, my thing with it was, and Bella and I watched it together, and so it was one of those things where because I thought about this a lot. Actually, the first episode of this podcast, I went on a rant about it because it was like the day after I had watched it, and like for me, especially, you probably appreciate this as a writer, and my other buddy gave me a different perspective on it, so maybe I kind of understand it a little bit more. But like, I need someone to root for, And when I watched that movie front to back, I rooted for nobody. At no point did I like anyone in that film.
I've heard people say that, yeah.
And so personally, like, I don't even need them to win. Like, I'm not one of those people who needs a Marvel movie where the good guys always win every time. Like, it's not like that. It's just I need somebody I like, even if it's not the main character, even if it's like Shakespeare's Iago, where he's like the bad guy, but he's the main character. Like, I'm okay with that. But like, I need someone I can get behind. At first, I thought maybe it was his family. I'm like, yeah, that the poor family has to deal with him, and then his wife is just a terrible human being too. And then like his girlfriend's a terrible human being. The only person that I kind of liked for a second was the grandpa. Like when he got swindled into loaning some money.
Judd Hirsch, yeah. Well, he's just likable.
There for like 10 seconds. He's there for 10 seconds. I was like, I like you, and now you're gone. And
take the fucking opal. Yeah, when he
just
loses, yeah. I get what you're saying. I think my counter to that is that I think likability is overrated. I think that interesting is important, and I just found Howard Ratner very interesting. Like, I didn't. Would I want to like go get a beer with that guy? No, probably not. Yeah. But I think I also I bought into the world. And again, I'm a fan of Sandler, and it was very cool for me to see him in a way that that we hadn't seen him in before. I don't think he's ever played like such a morally reprehensible character. Like, usually,
he's essentially the
usually
bad
there's
guy.
Something.
Yeah.
Even if he's like a slacker or a schlub or whatever, you can't help but love him, or you like him or whatever. But Howard's got very few redeeming qualities. But I think the thing about it that struck me that I thought was very smart on the filmmaker's part was that they made him good at gambling. Because if you think about it, he won.
Yeah, he won the bet.
He won twice. This spoiler alert, if anybody hasn't seen it, he won twice. But his brother-in-law, Arno, stopped the first bet because he was like, you're gambling with my money and fuck you.
Oh,
and
yeah,
he fucked
you're right.
him for that. And then the final bet he wins. Right. And I thought that was very interesting because that also shows that he really is a guy who can't stop. Because I think if they had made him a bad gambler who kept chasing it, that's a gambling addiction that we've seen. But if he's a good gambler who's winning and actually succeeding, but he still can't stop, that's a real fucking problem. Because he's never going to stop.
Right, yeah.
Like,
and the scores
point.
are just going to get bigger and bigger until eventually, by the nature of gambling, even if you're really good at it, you're going to lose. And so, the tension of unknowing.
I also think when it comes to characters, like I said, I think likability is overrated because I think if you're, and again, it's all personal taste, it's subjective. If you are interested in them and if you are intrigued with them, I think that to me is way more important. Like, I'm trying to think of characters who like on paper aren't very likable, but you're into them. Daniel Day-Lewis in There Will Be Blood. Like, you're just you can't really take your eyes off of him. But I wouldn't say he's very likable at all. I mean, he's a greedy motherfucker.
Or like De Niro. I maybe this has been a while since I've seen it, but like De Niro in Taxi Driver, right? I mean, that guy's kind of a bad guy, but
he's creepy. But if you can watch him and be zoned in and be like, I'm in whatever this guy does. I mean, dude, my favorite movie of all time is Casino, and I wouldn't say that any characters in that are very likable, but they're interesting. And I think a lot of credit is due to Scorsese there and the script and him and this co-screenwriter Nick Pileggi. And
that's a good point. It's especially mafia movies and stuff. No, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, man. No, seriously. Don't ever fucking do it again. No, I'm kidding. But
I'll reach to this screen
I think likability is just like, I think it's subjective. And I think I also think sometimes likability can be boring. I think I agree with you that you have to have someone to root for. And if you don't care, that's how I felt watching Bull Durham. I just didn't fucking care. And those on paper are totally likable. They're not bad people at all, but I just didn't give a fuck. And I think if you can tell very, with Bull Durham, I think within the first 20 minutes, I was like, I'm not into this, but I'm committed and I'm going to finish it. I don't like leaving things unfinished. So I think you can tell pretty quickly.
Same.
And I think with Uncut Gems, I mean, the opening credits, how you're going to feel.
The space theme and everything. I don't know. It's so, I agree with you. I think I'm starting to see the light, because my buddy was kind of explaining to me too a little bit about the point of the film was less that you're again, less that you like anybody. It's more that you're having a window into somebody's life that you wouldn't otherwise see in a way, in a very unique way. And I see that. I think more or less it's and it's interesting because the likability thing, I don't know if like maybe that was the right word for myself, because I think because I love mobster movies. I love Scorsese films. Like I think at this point he's making nobody's stopping this guy. That his most recent one was like way too long. Like, that was like 3 films put into one. Dude.
I still thought it was amazing, but yes, it was 3.5 hours. I mean, I've seen it once.
It was well done, but it was just like it's multiple sittings. You know? Yeah,
I saw it in a theater, so I saw it all the way through because I knew, having ADD, I knew that I was going to pause it and get up, and I just was like, this movie, I want to see. Start to finish all the way through, because look, I've seen movies in pieces and I've still loved them and enjoyed them, but there was just something about that cast, that director, you know, that movie, the fact that we had an opportunity to see it on the big screen. I was like, this is never going to happen. And it was like seeing it on the big screen, like people applauded when De Niro, Pacino, Pesci, Keitel, like when they all came on screen. It was that type of screening, and I was like, this is why I'm here. It may not happen again. Those guys are getting pretty old. You never know. And it's true. But speaking of those mafia movies, it's like one of those things where like I see what you're saying with the likability thing, especially because like those are great examples where they're all mobsters. Like, you know, like you shouldn't like any of them, but yet it's still riveting. Goodfellas is another great example.
Yeah, Goodfellas. Oh, great movie. Yeah. And it's like you don't really like them, but you also, I think it's like to me it's like I want to root for somebody. I don't know if it's like I don't know what that is in me. I don't know if it's like
so
maybe it's
give
too
me an
reductionist.
example of like a character in a movie where you're like, I really am fucking rooting for them, because I get that. I think that's very true.
Yeah, I think
and reasonable.
Yeah, man, I think that like that you're rooting for somebody. I mean, good examples of that are like those detective stuff, like True Detective. Like you really want the bad guys to get caught. You're rooting for the good guys. That's a little bit more simple because that's like a True North type writing thing where like the good guys always win, in the sense where like the detective will always figure out who the bad guy is and the world is encapsulated. Right. But like I think another good example is like I mean, going back to Othello, like that's just because it's one that we had just talked about briefly.
Yeah. You definitely want Othello to like, you know, like fucking find out Iago and fuck him up. Yeah, that's true.
And the dramatic irony, the whole film makes it great that you don't know if it's gonna happen, and it doesn't. It's a tragedy, but like you have someone to try and get behind. And to me, I think it's because I'm able to put myself. Maybe this is what it is. I'm able to put myself in that place by like accepting, you know, like that, like, oh, I'm not Othello, but like I'm thinking like, okay, I'm rooting for this guy, so this is the team I'm on. I'm on this ride with him, you know. And in that film, I just felt like I'm not on this ride with anybody. I'm just letting off the walls, and that's not a bad experience. It's just different than I think what I'm used to. So maybe that's
I think that's totally fair. I think that it all comes down to subjectivity and like what we look for. And like I think if you look for someone to root for, first of all, I think that's very valid, and I think that is extremely reasonable. Like if you're paying your hard-earned money to like here's a good example of a movie. It's on HBO right now if you haven't watched it yet. It's called Ready or Not, and it's about a very like dark game of hide and seek. That's all I'll say. But that has a heroine that you definitely root for, and I think it's such a fun, enjoyable movie. And same with, like, we were just talking about Stephen King, the kids in It. You're definitely rooting for them. You're rooting for every single one of them. But I also think when it comes to, I think, but that's what I think is so great about film as an art form, is that there are reasons why we like other movies, and they can be different from reasons why we like other movies. Like, I personally value intoxication over rooting for someone. That's just my personal taste. And what I mean by that is like just putting on a movie and just being sucked the fuck in. And I think Uncut Gems is that. I think Scorsese does that brilliantly. Like Casino and Goodfellas, I think you're fucking sucked in. And I think you're just intoxicated by this world. The images, the music, the editing, the direction, the performances, the fucking writing. It's like everything just I don't know. It's an addiction in a way, you know. It's like I can't get enough of this. But I think I love horror movies because
love it.
I think horror movies can actually be a great example of both in a way of like being intoxicated by a really scary world, but also watching characters and just be rooting for them and being like, you know, get out.
Right.
You know, like the movie Get Out, for example. Like you're really with Chris the whole time.
Oh yeah.
And it's great.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good example. Gosh, yeah, dude, it is so good. I don't like. So funny story about it, because you brought it up and it reminded me of what. So we were talking about Audible. This is gonna go all the way back to the beginning here. So I was listening to that book as well.
Great,
but at the time,
Steven Weber, man,
it's so good. Like just the way
he deserves an Oscar for that fucking audiobook performance.
Dude, there should be some sort of award or like rating system for those people, because like I feel like it really makes or breaks the. I
think there is. There has to be. Like if there isn't yet, there definitely should be. But I have a feeling there might be. Anyway.
Yeah, no, because it really makes or breaks it. And man, I was listening to it, and I remember I was listening to it while I was at the time I was going for. We were training for a half marathon. Me and Bella were training, so we were running, and I would run a lot at night. And I would run a lot at night and then be listening to it. And dude, it definitely made my mile times get a little faster. But
see, that's what I'm talking about, is like you're intoxicated by this thing and it puts you in this mood and you're almost addicted to it, especially if you do it multiple times. I listened to the audiobook at night a few times too, and it was fun. It kind of put me in this mood of like, ooh, something's gonna happen. And it was exciting.
Yeah, and the world building is like such a thing too. Like I agree with you on that. Like I was talking to Kevin a little bit about that actually, especially with his world of animation. Like because when he's writing and animating, and like you have ultimate control even when you're the director's chair.
You're literally building worlds in animation.
Exactly, and it's just it's interesting to hear you talk about it though, in the sense of like with live action and like the brilliance of somebody like Scorsese, where like he is able to pull you so deeply into that world, even though it's just like a couple years ago. You know, it's not like he's bringing you to Mars or something, like something really intense like Rick and Morty, where it's like, oh, they're traveling through space and it's all animated. It's like he's really bringing you into a world that's not that far from your own. It's almost like right next to it.
Yeah, and his worlds are paradoxical because like they seem appealing in some ways. Like the lights of Vegas in the 70s, you're like, what a time that must have been. And like, you know, New York in the 40s and Goodfellas with the Tony Bennett music and the suits, you're like, what a time that must have been. But underneath is like all this, you know, fringe of society people and crime and destruction and, you know, just morbid exploration of guilt in a lot of them, of guilt and control and shame and all these very human things. And I think that that's something that, like, look, I think an argument can be made for where you need both. You need interesting characters and you need like interesting worlds to explore. I mean, like, I think another great example of Scorsese characters is Jordan Belfort in The Wolf of Wall Street, is Leonardo DiCaprio. And like, there's his voiceover when he's like, when he's talking about his friend Brad, who played by John Bernthal, who like gets out of jail, and he's like, he gets out of jail. We threw him a big party on a yacht, but then right after that, drops dead, massive heart attack at 35, same age as Mozart. Anyway, I don't know why that came to mind. Like that's very like that's character, like that little thing where he's like same age as Mozart. Anyway, I don't know. Like Scorsese's so good at having people just like you're talking to a real person. You know, like we had a tangent earlier in this conversation, and I think he's so good at putting them in cinematic worlds. So it makes you think that like, oh, I can relate to that. I know what that thought means. I've had that thought. Yeah. And yet it's in this big sprawling film. And I think that's something that is almost unmatched by Scorsese. But then you have, you know, I just think at the end of the day, you know, great movies and part of my process, which I know you wanted to talk about at some point, like one thing that I like to try and do is I just like to try and make the everyday and little things just feel cinematic. And I know that's kind of a broad description and a broad term, but
yeah,
I don't know. I think I think you have to justify why you're putting it on screen. And part of that justification for me is making sure that it feels cinematic. And I wouldn't necessarily say that that's like my first goal is to like, I don't care what it is, make it look cinematic, because if the content sucks, then it sucks. There's no, you can't, what's the phrase? You can't put lipstick on a pig or something. Like, you know, you can only make something as good as, you know, what's on the page. But here's the thing, the difference, especially for directing, and you mentioned writer. I'm actually more of a director than a writer. I do write, and I have definitely, I feel like I've gotten better at it over the years. A lot of that is thanks to my creative partner Khalil Mascati, who he and I created a show, and we're in the process of pitching it right now. But like, he's such a fucking fantastic writer. He just like I don't know how he does it, but it's just so inherently who he is, where he just like he has such an interesting point of view on like just marrying style and substance. And I just think he's got like such a unique way of looking at the world, which is great, especially on the page. But that's the thing, is that like for a director, like they can get a great script, but if they're not a good director, then they're going to fuck it up, and it's going to be their fault. So it's like directors have to bring something to life. Like you have to bring it to life in a way that only you can. And you better make sure that you're a good fit for the material, whether you wrote it or someone else, because you have to be able to see it, and you have to be able to, you know, not necessarily do everything yourself, but you have to be able to explain it to people on the set. Like you have to be able to explain it to your cinematographer, and you have to shoot with a point of view, because the writer has a point of view and they have a voice, and the director has a point of view and they have a voice, and the writer's point of view and voice is their words, and the director's point of view and voice is their eye. And they have to be a cohesive thing. I mean, look at like David Fincher and Aaron Sorkin for The Social Network. Like that's one of the most brilliant writer director teams in recent memory, in terms of just a cohesive vision completely coming to life. And you know, you have to be able to, sorry, I'm trying to put it into words. This is why I'm more of a director than a writer, because I'm struggling with words, but I'm seeing it all in my head.
I'm getting
it. It's like,
I'm getting it.
It's like you have to be able to, you know, work in service of the writer in terms of the words, but you also have to make sure that you're bringing it to life where people can watch it and be like, oh, that's an Andrew Carter thing. Like that's my goal, is for when someone to watch something of mine, they're like, I know who made that. And I'm obviously have a long way to go, but but I think that like that's what I start with, is like, how can I make something cinematic? Like I even, you know, when I was at Paramount, I made sketches a bunch, and I always made them, or at least tried to make them cinematic, because that's just how I see the world. I'm a dramatic guy. I'm a Leo, so I'm fucking emotional and big. And that's just how I see the world. I feel like I'm in a movie sometimes. I think we all do. I feel like if you're going on a run and an epic song comes on, you kind of are like looking around like, where's the camera? You know, you just feel that. And so I just want that to be a part of everything, even if it's a sketch about, you know, a guy asking another guy to poop on his face, which is a sketch I made. I'm not even kidding. And that was
amazing.
And that was born. And here's another thing that's a part of my process, is just, and ironic coming from a guy with ADD, it's paying attention, because you never know where a good idea is going to come from. The whole reason why I started working with Khalil is because of a story that my father-in-law told me. And this was when we were, Zoe and I had first started dating, and we were visiting her parents in Palm Springs, and which is ultimately where we actually had our wedding ceremony, because that was the first place we went away together. Palm Springs is fucking awesome. And so and so Zoe's family and I were on a hike, and her dad was talking about how he had just done this hike recently, and her parents are British. And so her mom was like, oh, Steve, you just did this hike, didn't you? Yeah, you just did this. And he was like, oh, yes, I did. Yeah. And I actually got lost. I got lost on the hike. And we were like, oh, wow. And he was like, oh, yeah. And I got lost, couldn't find my way. And I actually bumped into a nice guy, and we actually helped each other find our way home. And we exchanged numbers to get to hike again. And he never texted me. And he was like very sad about it.
Yeah.
And I just heard that and I was like, that's funny. Like that's a funny, like romantic comedy, like of like two friends who like meet, make a plan, and then one doesn't text the other, but they treat it like, a date. And so I made a short about that. And that's the short that my now friend and partner Khalil saw at a little tiny film festival. And he approached me and was like, hey, I'm looking for, filmmakers to work with. I liked your stuff. Like, do you want to ever connect? And I was like, yeah, totally. And then he sent me the script for Revenge Tour, which is the show that we created. And I was like,
and you never
this is the fucking best thing I've ever read. And I was like, we have to make this now. And we made it.
Yeah.
And it premiered at the LA Film Festival in 2018. And then it got into South by Southwest and
amazing.
Yeah. And then it got into the Sundance New Voices Lab. And so we've been workshopping it ever since. And
that's awesome. Sorry, what was it? Revenge
Tour. Yeah. So it's about a guy who goes through a breakup and he raps in secret to deal with it. And one of his raps gets out online and kind of goes viral. And then then it becomes this exploration of toxic masculinity, because it's this guy who's dealing with these things and these feelings and kind of blaming things on his ex. But in reality, he has some responsibility there that he needs to confront, and he confronts it through his music. And we use the raps to help tell the story and move it forward while flashing back to parts of the relationship, because music is ultimately, connected to memory. So there are moments when it feels like a music video, and it's like, so, when I read it, it was all there on the page, right? But I had to make sure that I was going to bring it to life in a way that I was like, okay, this is how I see it. This is what works. I see this as what. Here's the thing: everything was there on the page, but what wasn't there was the cinematic vision. Not that, it's not like it wasn't there at all. It was obviously like inherent within the text. But when I read it, I was like, this is how I see it. I see shooting it in aspect ratio of 2:40. Which for anybody who's listening that doesn't know what that means, it's just a wider frame. And the reason for that is because this guy's going through a breakup, and I wanted him to not be surrounded that much in the frame. I wanted there to be a lot of negative space around him to, to perpetuate, to kind of accentuate his loneliness and what he was going through. But the music sequences when he's rapping, I wanted us to be kind of right there with him, right up front, because what I think, and this was actually before A Star Is Born came out, but I remember I heard Bradley Cooper say this, and I was like, I'm going to use that because that sounds good, and that's kind of exactly what I did, but I couldn't put it into the eloquent words like he did. But like, he made a deliberate choice to stay with the actors on stage while they were performing and never cut to the audience, because he wanted us to be right there with them while they were performing. So it kind of feels like you're there. And that's what we did for the music sequences in Revenge Tour when he's rapping, because we wanted the audience to really be there in that moment. And at that moment, it's make or break, because it happens about halfway through the short. And it's like, is this guy going to be good at rapping, or is he going to be bad? Right. And he's actually really fucking good.
Yeah.
So it's like the stakes are really high, and it's a really dramatic moment. And so you want him to be right up, like right where I am now, as opposed to far away.
Yeah, because you want to, like you said, you want to be there with him. It's so interesting because it's like the directing is very far out of my wheelhouse, and it's nothing I've ever done it really ever. I think except for maybe once in school for a project, but it's so interesting hearing you talk about it, because it's so much of what we do in any art form, like with, I can equate it to music in a lot of ways, where it's like I might be a really good producer, but like mixing it is everything. Like if I don't have a good mix engineer, like it doesn't matter how good my beat is in my mind, if the drums aren't hitting right, if the bass isn't like cutting through, and like all the different parts, if the vocal line is muddy in the middle, no one's going to hear your lyric. It doesn't really matter how good the words were. And it's so it equates exactly to what you're talking about in a lot of ways. It's very interesting to hear you talk about it like that. The collaborative process of,
I was just going to say, acting, dude, it's so collaborative. That's one thing that I want to make very clear. Revenge Tour is as good as it is because of everyone, not just because of one person. And it's
Yeah.
because everything came together in a great way. And that's everything that turns out good is collaboration. As much as artists, we'd like to take credit, we can't take all of it. You know, like there are things that we deserve credit for, obviously. And I think credit is important for your self-esteem and for self-validation. But I also think that you have to acknowledge that these things are collaborative. And I'm talking about everybody down to people who run errands to pick up lunch, which is something I've done many times. It's like that shit fucking matters. Same. Like maybe just because their creative voice isn't necessarily a part of it, it doesn't mean that they're not helping get it done. Because
absolutely, because if you had to jump out of that moment or whatever, maybe you're in the middle of something, and it's like if you had to jump out of that moment, you might not be able to recapture it.
And if you had to jump out of it because you had to go pick it up instead of another person, it's like you're that's 100% right. That's a great way to look at it. And you know, it's like it's the same thing. Like you can shoot something great, you can write something great, and then you can have someone direct something great. But if you have a bad editor, and it's not going to come together nicely either. That's why I edit everything that I shoot, because I'm like, I see it this way.
Oh, you do?
Let me do my thing. Like, and personally, my favorite thing is editing, because it's the most satisfying part. It's like, it's done. Now we can put it together. This is what I've been seeing the whole fucking time.
Yeah.
Like, now it's time to actually make it a thing. And it's important.
Yeah, it's so true, because editing is so much of it. Like it's I've been doing silly little YouTube videos and stuff like that during quarantine, doing podcasts and YouTube videos, and it's definitely not like cinematic or anything like that, but it's amazing how much of when it comes together, like just even the silly little short that I do, is through the editing. It's through the cutting the gaps out, making sure that like it cuts to a moment of me holding some, like, you know, all the little things that you do. It's like that is so much of it, and I see why you would want to be in the room, because like you said, you can get all the greatest shots in the world, but if even if your hand's not on the keyboard, like making the cuts, like at least having input on what's happening has to be vital.
When I was in film school, I learned how to edit more or less. I started editing when I was in high school, like on iMovie and stuff, but like I learned how to use like Avid and Final Cut Pro in college. And but then I never edited my own shit. And look, nothing I made in film school was good. Literally nothing. Like everything I made sucked.
Okay.
And I'm not blaming anybody but myself, because it was definitely on me. But I also would sit behind the editor's shoulders, and I fucking hated sitting there, because I just wanted to be doing everything. I guess you could argue I'm a little bit of a control freak, but I think
no worries, I get it.
I think it's important to just be honest with yourself. I think that's another important part of the artistic process for me personally as well, is just be honest with yourself. Have an honest conversation. Like I trained as an actor for like 2 years. I went to the Sanford Meisner Center in Burbank. Shout out to Ranjiv Pereira if he's listening. Great acting coach. If you want to take some lessons, he will fucking test you just on like the most primal fundamental level. And I don't know. It was great training for me as an artist, because it made me a better director. And that was always my goal. To get in there and get better at directing. But after the training, I was like, you know, I have this training. Let me see if I can go for acting a little bit. And like, first of all, I didn't really have very good luck, frankly. And I booked a couple things, like a commercial here and there. But I didn't love it. I never loved it. And I had to be honest with myself. And frankly, I also didn't think I was very good. I just really didn't see. And I remember early on when I was dating Zoe, because I was still like, acting was still kind of like my main thing. And I was telling myself that it was my main focus at the time, because I was like, well, I have all this training and I've like booked commercials. So the evidence is there, right? But my heart and my gut were telling me like, dude, you've wanted to make movies since you were 12, like go do that. And so I started making things that I was in, like making sketches that were like 1.5 to 3.5 minutes that I was in. And I was good enough to be in those, but I just didn't think, like, I don't think anybody could watch something that I was in as like the lead and be like, he's got a future at acting. But I think the content was solid enough where people could be like, oh, I'd watch more if that guy was making them. And I remember I had a very honest conversation with Zoe I think it was maybe like a year into our relationship or something, where I was like, be honest with me, like, what are my strengths? Like, what do you think? And she was like, look, she's like, I think you're a fine actor. I think you're solid or whatever. But I think as a director and writer, I think you could be one of the best, which, I mean, I don't think I'm ever going to be one of the best. I hope to have a fucking career, and that's all I want, is to just be working and making good stuff. But like, when she said that, it clicked, and I appreciated her honesty. And then we made Revenge Tour, and everything that I had made before, and I didn't do too much submitting, but everything I made before, it got rejected from every festival I ever submitted it to. And like, nothing ever got me any meetings. And then we made Revenge Tour, and now, I have a manager, I have agents, and we got into like major film festivals, and we ended up winning some awards, like, which is awesome. It's amazing and totally unexpected. And we're so fortunate and thankful for it. But it's like, that was really when I was like, okay, this is the universe telling me, like, do this, like, this is what you should be doing. Because for both Khalil and I, like, this was the first thing we had made. This was, at the time, this was like, and honestly, still to this day, it's like, it's the best thing either one of us has ever been involved in, him as a writer, me as a director. Yeah. And like, because he was directing his own stuff and it wasn't really clicking for him. And like, there were things that I was writing that were funny, but there wasn't enough like substance there. And and then we made this thing, and like, we both had a type of success that we had never had before. And so we were like, let's see this thing through. And now we collaborate on quite a lot of things. There are certain things that I'll say, like, hey, I want to do this. And same with him, with me being like, hey, I want to do this. And we're totally supportive of, other things that we want to do separately, because I think that helps any partnership. But the majority of things we do together. And you also have to watch your ego too. Because there was a time when our egos were getting the better of us a little bit. There was some resentment with he and I for a while, just because of things that we felt like we weren't getting. But we had an honest conversation with each other, and we acknowledged, like, we're both kind of feeling these certain things, and we listened, and we acknowledged, and we apologized, and again, that's it's awesome. Like, it goes back to what I just said, which is like, just be honest with yourself and be honest with whoever you're working with. And just be honest about how talented you are, like, and that's what I did with acting. I was like, I don't think I'm that talented of an actor, but I do have things to say as a director and writer. So that was ultimately where I landed.
Yeah. And I don't think it's really interesting to hear you talk about that, man, because a lot of things are clicking in my brain as you're talking, and I would hope for other people too as they're listening. But it's interesting hearing you talk about it, because it made a couple stories pop into my head, and one of them was my dad was in the Marine Corps.
Wow.
And he always so he told me that one of the reasons why, when you're in the Marines, you respect your drill instructor so much is because before he tells you to do anything, before he tells you to go climb that rope, do 50 push-ups, do whatever, do any sort of movement or command or whatever, they do it first. They show you how to do it themselves. It's not like, go climb that rope. They climb the rope to the top, they ring the bell, and they go, now you do that 100 times or whatever it is, right? But the interesting part of me and my dad are very different in a lot of ways. I'm much more artistic, and he's very business Marine Corps type mind. But what crossed over there, and it kind of speaks to what you're talking about, is there's nothing wrong with dabbling in all the different aspects of like what you're trying to do, because I feel like having the knowledge of how to actually do it, it's like training a fighter. Like, you may never have been the best fighter. Maybe you're a better coach, and you might train the fighter, but like, the only reason you could do that is because at some point you've been in the ring, and like the way that you might be able to direct an actor better because of the fact that you actually went into acting courses and did all that, have all that background in that, and the fact that you've dabbled in writing, it like, but also keeping the presence of mind of realizing, like, this isn't what I want to do, or I'm gonna like necessarily like invest all my time in. But like, to understand the way that it works more, or like spending time behind the editor's chair, is like really interesting and key, I think, because it's that balance of what you're talking about, of like self-awareness, of realizing that you're not like you're not trying to be him or her, whoever's in the chair, but you're trying to gain enough of an understanding where you can communicate.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Because there's so much of that in my world too, where like, you know.
Yeah. What's it like in the music? What's the equivalent of that, would you say, in the music world?
The equivalent, I think, would be like, so there's a guy that I'm a really big fan of, John Bellion. I think he's a really talented musician, incredible writer, producer, and he sings on his own tracks. He produces for other people as well. But his strengths are writing and producing. He can sing, but and he does in his own tracks, but like he's not a belter. He's not sitting there like hitting all crazy notes. He's mostly it's his production and his songwriting that are really exceptional. But and it's interesting because so much of this in our world now, I feel like a lot of the times it's marketed in a way where they market him as this genius, and he is in some ways, but as this genius of everything. He does everything himself, right? He writes, produces, sings it, and in a way he kind of does. But when one thing that I really like that he does is that for almost every track that he makes, he has a behind the scenes footage, and I like him as an artist. But I was really interested when I watched it because one of the things that he does very well is he's basically the director of a song. That's what he does. So he makes the beat. Yeah, he makes the beat, but then what he does and what I think makes him really excel and makes his stuff really interesting to listen to and whatever is that he makes the beat, but then he knows what engineer to get into the room to mix it properly. And he also knows, I really want a sultry vocal on this. I'm not that guy. I'm not the guy who's going to sing a sultry vocal. Let me call up my friend Travis Mendez. I know he's got that kind of voice. You know, and then like, you know what would really slap here? A killer bass line. But he doesn't play bass. He plays keys. So he goes, I know my buddy from, for you it would be film school, but for him it's, you know, I know my buddy from this, music program I used to work with. He can play the bass like no other. We got to get him in the room. And to me, so much of like realizing you're not the bass, but he could probably pick up a bass and play it, right? But it's not going to have the same feeling or oomph that somebody else is going to be able to play it with. And so having the humbleness of realizing that, but knowing your position of like, I'm still in charge. Like this is my project. I'm going to pull the right people, but like, I'm going to make it a collaborative thing, not be so like, I got to do it myself. And I think I was in that place for recently, and I'm starting to venture out of that, where I felt like I had to do it all on myself because I saw these people who were marketed as like, you have to be a producer, singer, songwriter, mix it all yourself, put it all out in that way. And I'm starting to realize the lie of that and how like just not true that is for really everybody, even the people
who ostensibly can do it all. I think it's like, you know, a big turning point for me with that, because I'm totally with you, man. I struggle with that too. And here's the thing, there are certain things that I think I can do, like a short film. I think I could write that myself, but I also know that Khalil's probably going to make it better. So I'm either going to be like, hey man, do you want to write this or collaborate with me on this? Like, I know that like whether I take the first pass or he does, I'm going to be like, yeah, you're going to make it better. So I'm definitely not going to just do it on my like there. But on the flip side of that, there definitely has been a time in the past where I was like, I need to prove to myself that I can. And I think that's okay too, as an artist, to be like, I need to do something completely on my own to prove it to myself, not to prove it to anybody else, or not to, you know, because of not like an egotistical thing, just to be like privately like, hey, I got to do this thing. I think that's okay as well. But I think ultimately a big turning point for me with that was recently I was watching. So if anybody listening can't already tell, I'm a huge film nerd. It's my fucking life. And so Jaws just came out on 4K Blu-ray 45th anniversary edition. So Daddy definitely picked that up. So I watched it, and I was watching it looks amazing on 4K. And I was watching the special features, and in the making of Jaws, Spielberg talked about how he wrote an entire draft of the script himself after the writer Peter Benchley gave him either the script or the manuscript for the book or outline or something. And Spielberg wrote the draft himself because he needed to see that he could do it, to see if he could get excited about directing it. And he was like, I had no intention of like sharing writing credit or co-writing credit. I just needed to see that I could do it. But I wanted to see if there were certain scenes that I liked enough to try and keep in there. But I wanted to give it a shot myself before handing it off to someone else who I know is way more capable and qualified than I am. And the fact that fucking Spielberg could say that, like, that's a huge turning point of like, okay, if this guy can say like, yeah, I can't even do it all on my own, then there's no reason why we should be able to be like, there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to say the same thing. And,
so true.
You know, again, I think it does depend on the project, but look, Spielberg is a director. He does not write his own scripts. I think he's written maybe a few. Like the one that stands out is Close Encounters of the Third Kind. That's might be one of the only ones that he made into a successful feature film. Maybe aside from some of his early stuff, but like his big hits, like other people wrote them. Like, you know, all the Indiana Jones movies, Jurassic Park, Schindler's List, Jaws. I mean, Jaws was written by Carl Gottlieb and Peter Benchley, and Peter Benchley wrote the book. And it's like, you know, I think that it's, you know, ultimately it's this thing where it's like, TV is, or people like to say TV is a writer's medium and film is a director's medium, but like I think that's interesting and I think that's fair, but I also think that there are plenty of movies that definitely feel like the writers, and there are plenty of TV shows that feel like the directors, like certain episodes of shows, like maybe like certain,
especially now. I feel like things are getting so blurred now with the Netflix and HBO stuff. Like one thing that I would say feels very director-heavy TV show would be True Detective.
I mean, Cary Fukunaga directed the whole first season, and like he directed the new Bond movie. It's like because of that, and there are a lot of. I mean, Ben Stiller directed a whole miniseries on Showtime, Escape at Dannemora, and it's like that is such a well-directed show, and as you said, it's definitely. The lines are definitely blurring. I think in a great way. I think you can do both. I think ultimately but ultimately in a weird way, it's not really up to the artist. It's up to the public. It's up to how they perceive it. It's up to how people receive it and be like, oh, that's a great directorial thing, or, oh, the writing is so good, or both. I mean, I think you can have both too. I think, you know, but I think ultimately especially during a pandemic, I think it's important to, especially when it comes to being creative, just to give yourself permission to feel. Like there are days where because I struggle with depression sometimes as well. I wouldn't say that I'm clinically depressed. I would say that I have bouts with it, and there have definitely been moments during this pandemic where I just don't want to get up and I don't want to do anything, and it's like where you can't wait for it to be night so you can just fucking go to sleep again. And what I've learned is that that's okay. As long as you're not hurting yourself or hurting anyone else, and just feeling it and just giving yourself permission to feel, I think it's okay. And I think that creative people right now, especially considering that, you know, our industry is pretty much at a standstill, not only is it okay to feel those things, it's like, you know, people are saying like, well, you got to work even harder now to be creative and innovative and stuff. And like, there are going to be days where you're like, fuck yeah, let's grab the bull by the horns and do it. And then there are going to be days where you're like, I just want to sit in the bath and watch the OC, which is 100% what I've done. And I'm not even kidding.
100%. 100%.
You need to.
No, but I appreciate the honesty on that one though, dude. Because it's true. It's like, it's such a weird, it's an interesting point that you brought up. It's like, there's a difference between just letting yourself feel it and not denying the fact that you're feeling it, and that it's okay to feel it and all, and then and like going through it and pushing through the emotion, versus you know, ignoring it or beating yourself up even more for feeling a certain way because of the fact that, like you said, especially in the pandemic, like, dude, my industry is shot. One of my main sources of income was touring with bands.
Man, I'm sorry.
And that's done for years.
Jesus.
Years. That's one of the reasons why I'm pivoting and trying new things and whatever.
But I give you credit, man. You're already on 21 episodes of your podcast. Like, that's no joke. That's not hard. That's not easy.
Thanks, man.
And that's not hard. That sounds terrible. I'm like, that's not hard, man. I mean, any idiot could do that. No, but
just shove a mic in somebody's face.
It's no joke, man. And the amount of care that you put into it too.
Thanks,
it's like
man.
you have a logo, you have a theme song. It's not just like, let's just sit and talk. Like you give a shit.
Yeah,
and that's
I appreciate
important.
that.
And I think that to be able to pivot during this time, I mean, dude, I've had so many conversations with myself where I'm like, is this it? Like, I've talked with my manager and just been like, should I give up? Like, is this just not going to happen? Because it's like, I'm in a weird position where like we've had success with Revenge Tour on the festival circuit and like people are interested, but like, you're still fucking waiting and I was talking to my parents the other day where I'm like, I'm just kind of waiting. And they're like, well, what are you doing to keep it busy? And like, what are you doing? And I'm like, let me tell you, I'm waiting on this. I finished the draft of this and I'm waiting on that. And I finished this and I'm waiting on that. And now we're up to these people. And it's like, it really is a waiting game in a lot of ways. And that is frustrating. So you do have to find ways to pivot, whether that's like, I mean, I've fallen in love with cooking during this pandemic. Like I love, dude, the chef show on Netflix is that movie and the movie Chef, like my fucking happy place. Like for my birthday is August 12th, and I was talking to Zoe, and I was like, I think, because she was like, "What do you want?" And I was like, I don't really want anything, babe, honestly. And I really mean like I just want our health. I just want us and our dog to be healthy because of how much the fucking COVID is spiking right now. But then she was like, "No, really," and I was like, "Well, I guess a smoker." And I was like, which I just what a complete 180 from being such a selfless good guy to being like, actually, I want that, which is just I felt like such a dick. But like, dude, to be able to like smoke some ribs and brisket and like just. And Zoe and I are on a cleanse right now. We're doing this clean program for 21 days. We have
I saw that.
We have 5 days left. Thank God, because it sucks. But like, and I miss like cooking shit, and like food is such a fucking big part of our relationship of like, exploring new foods and trying new things. Like our first date, we went to Chago, which is one of Roy Choi's restaurants. He's Korean Mexican fusion, and it's fucking amazing. Ooh. And he just like, he's my favorite chef ever. And when he was a producer on Chef, and he trained Jon Favreau for that movie. And then the Chef show is him and Jon Favreau making things like anything from like chocolate lava cake to Cuban sandwiches to,
I'm Cuban, man. You're speaking my language.
Lobster rolls. Are you Cuban?
Yes, sir. Full Cuban, both sides.
Dude, I've never been to Cuba. I desperately want to go. But did you know that I think it was 2018, the Cuban sandwich that was voted the best in the world was right here in LA. It's called El Cochinito in Silver Lake.
Interesting. Okay.
El Cochinito. COHIN and fucking ITO. I spelled it wrong probably.
Okay, I'll remember that for after, because I got to go try it.
It's amazing.
Dude, have you ever been to Porto's Bakery?
Oh, yeah, they have a good Cuban too.
Really good. I mean, now at this point, they're so big that they're kind of churning stuff out a little bit. But I mean, the quality is still really high for the amount of volume that they get.
Yes,
and that's all Cuban owned, like actual like Cuban owned people.
Were you born in Cuba?
No, so I'm first generation born here. Both my parents are born in Cuba. They were born in just outside Havana.
Okay.
But yeah, man,
that's amazing, man.
Crazy. They had a crazy life just trying to get here, man. It makes me appreciate a lot of what we got here. It's like as effed up as we are sometimes.
Were you born in LA or were you born in other parts of California?
Yeah, North Hollywood. Basically, both my parents were in North Hollywood, and then the Cuban community is pretty tight knit up there, especially just because like, when you're immigrating, you gotta stick with your own to make sure that you make it.
Right. Yeah.
And so they kind of knew each other in Spain, because basically the only way you could get to America was you people, I don't know if everybody knows this, but you couldn't go straight from Cuba to America unless you're literally on a raft. I mean, obviously they had kids and stuff, like not my parents, but my grandparents, obviously, of my parents couldn't do that because it's just not just one person on a raft. So they went to Spain, and then they stayed there for a little bit with a couple family members, and then moved to the States. But wow. Yeah, and then they knew each other through mutual family friends, and it was actually really funny. My dad, when he first started dating my mom, he finally told like his parents, me and Grzela are gonna go out and whatever, and he goes, and my dad's dad told him, he's like, hijo, that's the daughter of Rene Yanez. You don't mess around with Rene Yanez's daughter. And it was like, yeah, dude. And so it was like, because they knew each other, but they had a mutual respect for each other. And so my family's always been super tight knit in a way where it's like both my grandmas would come, like I would have conjoined Christmases, like both my grandmas.
That's amazing.
It was really interesting. Like, and I didn't realize that wasn't normal until I was much older, that usually you go to like one parent's and then next
So
parents.
was your grandpa saying like, be nice to her? Like, don't
was
fuck around.
Like, don't mess around with her. Like, if you're going to date her, you got to date her seriously type thing.
Right.
Like, and he was like, no, I really like her. And obviously I'm here. So, hey.
Are your parents still together?
Yeah.
That's amazing, man.
Yeah, man. I'm really lucky and blessed by that, man.
Dude, for sure. Yeah, mine are too. Mine have been together for 38 years
nice.
now. Married for 38. Probably together for like 40 something. But like,
yeah.
It's wild, man. I mean, like you see, and dude, how many? I've seen so many. I mean, celebrities, I guess, but like people getting divorced during the pandemic. Dude, it's nuts.
Yeah, it's like, one of those things where it's like it to me, especially during the pandemic, I feel like there's certain things that are just outside of our control, like the creative stuff. Like, I mean,
right? Yeah.
Like, I think you're very right in everything you said about letting yourself feel it, understanding the fact that some of it's just a waiting game.
By the way, I just want to be clear, that's a fucking challenge for me. I'm not sitting here being like, come on, guys, this is what I do, and I'm doing great. I'm not doing great. I'm doing fine. Like, we're all doing as well as we can.
Exactly.
Like, I have days where I want to fucking die, and I have days where I feel much better. But, like, everything right now is kind of like 75% tops. Like you can't, I don't think anybody's having a day where they feel 100%.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying is like, that's okay. And again, it's a challenge and it oscillates. I was talking with my therapist the other day and she was like, your attitude and attraction to things, people, life in general, that changes moment to moment.
Yes. Yeah.
Like literally moment to moment. You can be waking up feeling like this is a great day.
Yeah. And by the end of it, you could have the worst day in life.
Like, just something can pop in your head and you can be like, today fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Like, and you suck. Like, you know, like for no reason. Like we got a dog during quarantine and like he's the cutest thing ever and we love him. His name's Bill. He's a schnoodle.
Yes.
And he's so cute, but like there are times where I'm like, or Zoe will be like, hey, can you take him out? And I'm like, yeah, let's go, Bill. And there are times where she's like, can you take him out? And I was like, I would rather do anything else.
Screw that guy.
Like, where it's like,
screw Bill.
No, just nothing against him, but I'm just
I
want to fucking die. Like, it's not about like, I also need to work on that because what I sometimes struggle with and suffer from is all or nothing thinking. It's like, I can't find the happy medium between like, life is perfect and I want to die. You have to live in the in-between because otherwise you'll go nuts.
Exactly.
I mean, everybody's living in the in-between the best they can. And I think that like, you know, maybe I'll listen to this back and be like, oh, that guy's, I agree with that guy. But then I'll remember that it's me and be like, what do I know?
Take your own advice. Yeah, dude. You know what? I read I don't know if you ever read this book, real short. Also, if you're an audiobook guy, great audiobook on it. The Four Agreements. You ever read that book?
I know the book.
Fantastic. Changed my life, dude. I'm
really?
Yeah, I'm not one of those where like I tout all these self-help books. There's a few that have really helped me, but that one 2 hours. So as far as audiobooks, I don't even know pages.
That's amazing.
Pages don't exist in this world. But but it's like 2 hours. Really great. And one of the things that he talks about there is exactly that. It's about doing your best. But he said your best is gonna, like you said, oscillate from moment to moment. Like there's certain moments where it's like it's gonna be harder to do your best than it is to like not, and give yourself the little grace of in between and not let it spiral and stuff. And yeah, man, that's super true.
It's tough, man. It's tough, but all we can do is our best. And another thing that my therapist said is your best today is going to be different from your best tomorrow.
Yes.
That helps too. That helps to remember that is like, oh, okay. So like if I don't do the exact same thing that I did today, tomorrow, or if I don't do more than I did today, tomorrow, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like again.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, the one thing that's really helped me through a lot of it is like, especially since, I mean, I'm sure you relate to this, like being self-employed or whatever, like whatever that means as a creative, but like, I'm not even really employed. I'm just doing whatever I can do.
I know, man.
But,
yeah, it's like one thing that's weird is I did have a day job, but I did lose it due to COVID, and I'm making more on unemployment than I was there, which is just fucking crazy in a lot of ways. But it's like, you know, some people say like, oh, people are taking advantage, but it's like, why is that your first thought instead of like, oh, the livable wage was there for everyone all along?
Right.
Like that should be people's first thought is like, these wages that we're getting paid. I hope this doesn't sound entitled. Maybe it does, but it's like, that's wrong. Like we should be all getting paid our worth. And the fact is that like with this additional $600 a week, like it's there.
Yeah.
It's literally there, but it's being withheld for whatever reason. And I know that I'm no expert, but at the same time, there is something a little weird about that to me. But like,
I feel you,
it's just like, you know, doing what I can to stay creative and stay focused. I mean, I'm editing a project for a friend that he's paying me for. And like, so it's like, yeah, as you said, man, it's just about being creative right now. But ultimately also it's just about, for me and Khalil, it's coming up with ideas like, you know, we're Revenge Tour is still our first priority, but we have other shows in development. We have a show called Abled, which is about my experience at the boarding school for learning difference kids. Yeah. And it's very much like a Scorsese movie because we want to show these kids like how they see the world. Yeah. And having ADD is a lot kind of like you're living in a montage. A little bit like you're jumping around and you're someone's talking to you and like you are thinking about something else. And it's like, it can be a memory from 10 years ago or something that someone said or a hypothetical. So there's just a lot of like wild.
Time is very loose in my world. Like time is, I don't know if that's an ADD thing, but time is very loose. Like I don't. Yeah. Like I just feel like you said, like somebody will say something and it reminds me of something from 10 years ago.
I know.
It feels as present right now as it did 10 years ago. It doesn't. Yeah. But then if you ask me to tell you like what date that happened, there's no way I could ever tell you because that time is so loose in my brain. Like
okay,
I'm really
so what's interesting for me is that I'm very good with dates. And I remember birthdays. Huh. I remember when movies came out. Yeah. Like ask me a random movie from our childhood and I might be able to tell you when it came out. Wow. Like the exact day.
Really like that?
Yeah.
Oh
like,
shoot. Okay, now we can definitely test this.
Anything like recent or like
Field of Dreams.
See, I don't know that one. But I know it was 1992.
100% better than I could ever do. Just the fact that you know the year.
I think it was July of 92. Maybe I'm wrong there.
Dude, I ain't gonna fact check you, but the fact that you could even say with some sort of certainty, like
now I want to look it up
within a 3-year gap is more more than I could ever do.
I'm gonna look it up. Field of Dreams. Let's
do it. Let's see what you got.
I might have even because I've actually never seen that movie. Oh, it's 1989. I was way off. Because I've never seen it, so I don't know. But yeah, May 5th, 1989. So that was
interesting.
Give me another one. Okay.
I'm bad with names, but what's the one where the girls play baseball because of the fact that the guys are off it? What is that one?
A League of Their Own?
League of Their Own.
Okay, that was 93. But again, I don't know.
But even the fact that you know 93 just like that, like off of.
Let me look it up.
That's pretty.
I'm gonna say April 93.
Okay.
League. Damn it, dude, 92. You gotta cut this part out.
You tout this
July 1st, 92. Oh man. If you think of one more, because third time's the charm, maybe I'll get it. No more baseball movies.
Oh yeah, I don't know why. I don't even like baseball. I don't know why I'm like only baseball movies apparently. Shoot. That came out. It has to come out like what? I have to give you a fair shot to. It's got to be one that we
90s, early 2000s, like one of those.
Okay. Let's go with like a Mean Girls.
Oh, easy. April 30th, 2004.
No way.
No, you look it up. You look it up so that people know it's not rigged.
All right.
I remember when that came out.
All right, hang on. Okay, Mean Girls. Let me see. What was your date?
April 30th, 2004.
Yeah, 2004. Yeah, dude. What the heck? That's crazy.
There we
All
go.
right. Honestly, the fact that you got within like a year or two was already impressive, and the fact that you knew any of them.
See, for
just
me, it's not
spot
because
on
I'm
was
usually
amazing.
like the other two. I'm so mad that I blew it on air. Like I'm so pissed because like for me, I'm like, yeah, whatever. I got within a year, but I didn't get it. Like because it's like it's a fun party trick.
Shoes and
and
hand
like
grenades,
but, so like when people tell it, I remember I forget where I was, but there was a time when I was going like just one after the other, and like people's minds were like being blown. And I felt very good about myself for such a trivial fucking thing.
That's just it.
But yeah, I think but like with ADD, it's like that's kind of one of the things we're exploring in the show is like how it's different for certain people. Like some people, as you said, time is very loose, and someone can mention something to you. What do you mean when you say someone can mention something to you and it's like just as important now versus when it was?
Like, okay, so I think the best way I can explain it is like when I've gotten a lot better with names, but I used to be really bad with names. But I could pass a guy in the hallway in college and tell you every time I've ever like passed him. I could tell you like how many times we've waved at each other. Like I could tell you every little thing that he told me about his life. Like if he told me like that his dog died, it's even something more trivial than that, because obviously that's a major moment for some people. But like just like I'm really good interpersonally with like who you are, what you mean to me, like what they. How they feel about themselves. Like I'm really good interpersonally in that way. But I may not know his name. Like that's just kind of,
Wow. Yeah.
And I wouldn't necessarily be able to tell you like, was that freshman year or junior year or whatever, stuff like that, where it's like, I'm not good at that.
But you could be like, we've said hi 13 times and I know that his,
like I've met that guy before this, like, I can't. Let's just put it this way. There's been a lot of times where, and maybe I'm just a forgettable person, but there's been a lot of times where I've met people, and like for another time, and I'm like, yeah, I remember I met you or I saw you at this party, da 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 da, and they were like, I don't even remember going to that party. Like, how do you remember that you saw me there?
So then you do have specific memories. I think that is an ADD thing. Like people can remember certain things. Like for me, it's birthdays and number shit. For you, it's like specific details about a person. But you might not remember their name. Yeah, exactly. That's so interesting. That's really
weird what sticks and what doesn't. But it's very like that. But like I said though, there's certain things that stick that I know personally that will stick for me. Period. And then there's certain things that I know that I have to work on, like names. Like I'm not good with names. It's so weird, but I'm really bad with names. But I know everything about you.
That's really funny.
Which is a weird way to do it. So it's like, I the reason I work on names is for two reasons. When I was on tour. It was just one of those things where I realized it, because to me before that I would always go, well, but I know everything about them, like I care about them, like I wish they knew that I cared about them.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But like there's so much symbolism and meaning, especially when you're traveling abroad and stuff, not just in the States. Like in the States it relates too, but especially like remembering someone's name and like their name, it means a lot.
Yeah, and you know why? Because
I didn't know that.
I think when you and again, I'm not trying to give us too much of a sob story here, but I think when you have something like ADD, and there are plenty of other people with afflictions that are, way more challenging, but something about having ADD, I don't know about you, but I assume the answer is yes, but something about it for me made me feel like an other growing up. It definitely it let me know like I was different. Like my friends got into better colleges and they did better in school, and I never did. So you being nice to someone, it's almost like you're compensating for the fact that maybe you felt different and you don't want them to feel how you felt. So you want them to feel as comfortable and as accepted as possible. Like that's why
Yeah.
you want to remember their fucking name and look at them and pay attention and really listen. But with the irony is that with ADD, like they can be talking to you and you can be like, and then you can forget everything they just said within 5 minutes and be like, right, yeah. And then you're like, shit. Like you work so hard to be, for lack of a better term, a good person. And then by the time the conversation's over, you're like, I don't remember anything about them. And I don't even remember their name.
Yeah. The tough thing,
not anything. You just like, you can space out. You drift.
Totally. I think that like the tough thing with ADD is it's one of those things where it's debilitating, but not enough to like, and it's obviously like any mental thing is it's not, there's no physical manifestation of it. So that's one thing, but like, it's also like debilitating enough where you like have those moments where like you wish there was some sort of understanding for it, but not enough where it's like if you were speaking on dyslexia earlier, like I literally cannot read that because it's mixed.
Yeah, one of my best friends from my boarding school has dyslexia, and he's talked about how like he would have to like come up with patterns in his head to remember certain words. Wow, dude, like he'd be like listening, and that's why he would like listen to the same music over and over and over again, and he would use that rhythm of the song to help him come up with like patterns to remember certain words in his book. So like if he, because his wording will be like backwards a little bit and the letters will be moving around. Yeah. But if he remembers the pattern, he'll be like, that's what that word means. Yeah. And like with ADD, the debilitating part of it was it's just sitting down and doing work. Yeah. And also it's knowing that you're a lot. That's kind of debilitating too. Is like knowing, really I'm a lot. I can tell this person thinks I'm a lot. Like what you said to your mom when you were a kid, when you're like, I know I'm being annoying right now. And that's hard. And like, that's kind of what our show is about, is like, it's giving a voice to underrepresented voices who you might not initially think are underrepresented. Yeah. Because I don't think we've ever seen a show or a movie that deals with kids with learning differences. I'm not talking about mental illness like what they've done in Silver Linings Playbook, which I think is brilliant. And I'm not talking about things like addiction, which we've seen many, many times done brilliantly. I'm talking about learning differences for kids, for young adolescents, which is a very specific and painful time to go through it, because high school is the fucking worst. And then on top of it, you have this. And then on top of that, you go to a school where everyone has it. So do you feel like, oh, okay, now I'm okay and we're all the same? Or do you feel now I'm at the place where everyone's going to make fun of me? Now I'm at the place where we're all hopeless and none of us have a shot. Like, what does this mean?
That's interesting. Like, does making it homogenous, like, does that make it better for you?
Right.
Or does it make it just feel like, well, I'm in the other school. I'm in the special school.
Does it make it better, or does it perpetuate your feelings of inadequacy? And that's something we're exploring. And I think it's important. And I think every time I've seen ADD, whether it's on TV or in a movie, it's by the numbers and it's cartoonish and it's like, I have ADD, and they're like shaking or whatever. And I'm like, that's not what it's like. Like, no, that's just not. And I want to just bring some fucking real truth to it. And that's something really that Khalil and I are developing. And then, we're excited about it. We're also developing a show about a private school basketball team where the mom is the head coach, and she's like had to overcome a lot. She's a woman of color, and so she's been underestimated her whole life, and she's kind of fighting to keep her family together because they've had some family drama, and all the while making sure that their team has a record-breaking season, and that's called Ball is Life. And we're excited about a lot of stuff, man, and we're also developing
that sounds really interesting. Both of those sound really interesting.
Thanks, man. We're also developing a couple movies, and then we're developing a proof of concept for a show that's like kind of like Better Things on FX, but with a younger couple during quarantine. Just like a slice of life of people dealing with things, like and how a young married couple deals with things during quarantine, like what they talk about, what they do. How they deal with taking antidepressants and how that makes them feel and the side effects of that, but also just like everyday things, like there's going to be like a scene where the guy's in the bath watching the OC, because that's something that I've done. And I just find that very funny. And I just think I don't know. I think it's unique. And I think that I think talking about mental health right now during this time without banging it over the head,
Right.
because that's not interesting.
Yeah.
I think talking about mental health right now is, I think it's important. And
Yeah.
I appreciate you indulging me on it. As much as we talked about creative, that's equally as important to me. So
Yeah, no, both. I agree. And it's honestly, it was fun to just be able to talk to somebody we're past our hour. I've just been enjoying the conversation for so long that I didn't want it to end. But I think,
likewise, man. Thanks.
But one of the things that I felt like was really like with ADD, it's so interesting. Before we end it, and I'll let you have the last words, I promise. But I feel like with the ADD thing, to me, it's like so much of like seeing it as like a difference, like just being wired differently. And like obviously it's debilitating in some ways, like where it's like you said, like with schooling and maybe some traditional ways of whatever. But there's also like there's something to be said about like just the creativity that like we have always had to like when you're talking about your friend with dyslexia, like that, the amount of creativity that goes into figuring out a creative solution to a problem, because he has a problem, he can't read it. The way that he figured out how to read that thing was to come up with a rhythm for a pattern by listening to a song like a normal person probably wouldn't think about that. Think of that kind of creative way. So I think the fact that we've had to creatively find little ways to fit into the norm all the time just constantly stimulates that creativity. And for me, I find people with stuff like that just to be more interesting and more creative and more like,
I agree, man. I don't think it's coincidence that people with ADD and dyslexia do artistically inclined things, or at the very least just creative things. Like that guy was my roommate for 2 years, and he constantly listened to the Game's first album, the documentary. And and like we were talking recently because I was talking to him about the show that we're doing, and like I just wanted to get his input and research or whatever. And when he mentioned that to me, I was like, that's why you listen to it nonstop. Like, and this was like 15 years ago or 16 years ago. And he was like, yeah, man, that's like, or not 16. Sorry. It was more like, I don't know, 17 maybe. No, Jesus. No, not that long.
Yeah.
What was it? It was 2000.
Not that old.
It was like, 14 years ago.
Wow.
But basically like that's why he did it. That's why he listened to that shit over and over and over again, because it was, I mean, look, he liked the music, obviously, but he also was doing it to remember things. And like, I agree. I think finding creative solutions to things, like, again, I think that's why I really hate it when people call them disabilities,
right?
Learning disability. Cause I'm like, fuck you. That's why the show's called Abled, because, because we're not disabled. We're actually abled in other ways. And, and like, you could say that like, oh, like, you can't read, or you could chalk it up to like, oh, you can't read, or like, oh, you can't listen. But it's not that. It's that like ADD, you're not like, it's not that you can't pay attention to anything. It's that you're paying attention to everything
all the time, dude.
All the time. You're constantly stimulated. Like, dude, Zoe will be like, hey, can you run upstairs and grab me something? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And I'll run up and I'll see that there's like a little like drop of water on the sink. So I'll start cleaning that, and then I'll start cleaning something else. And then like before I know it, 5 minutes pass and she's like, Andrew? And I'm like, oh, fuck. Like,
dude. Yeah. Like, it's so interesting to hear somebody else say that. Cause I feel like me and my dad have this, well, not this year, but we usually have a Vegas trip every year. It's just
nice
tradition we used to do a long time ago, and we just kept it up. And it was actually something he did with his buddies. And then when I became of age, he was like, all right, now my son can come. And so we just go have a good time, have a big steak and gamble a little bit. And
that's great. Where do you go to get the steak?
We go to this place called Del Frisco's. You ever been there?
Okay, no, I've heard of it though. I hear it's good.
Yeah, ritzy steakhouse. Really good though. Really good steak. Just they know what to do. It's one of those things where like literally that's it. I mean, you get steak and maybe a side, but it's like pretty much you're just eating them because it's so rich and flavorful and whatever.
Like that's what you get there.
Yeah, that's the thing. And but Vegas to me, dude, like just speaking on the stimulation, the overstimulation, it's like Dude, I can't. With Vegas, it's like we go there for 2 days, and I come back and I feel like I need a nap for a week because there's already so much going on there for the average person.
Dude, and the first time I went to Vegas, I had a fucking panic attack. I was like, I gotta get off the strip. Like, I'm losing it.
Dude, it's a lot. It's a lot going on, and it's like, and it's because, like you said, it's like I feel like when it's a blessing and a curse. Like staring. Having to do something specifically, but again, also there's certain things where like I'll be walking down the street with Bella and like I'll like pull her out of the way of something and she's like, what? And then like somebody will come by. It's like, cause I saw that come, cause again, like you said, you're paying attention to the whole scope. You're not. So I don't have blinders, but at the same time,
you saw them coming 5 minutes away, and
I saw that guy was gonna cross the street, which is gonna cause that guy to do whatever. And it's like, I'm not saying it's like a superpower or anything like that, but there's just certain aspects where it's like you said, like you're more able in certain ways, but in other ways, it's like
it's not a superpower, but it is. Life's a little heightened.
Yeah,
just a little bit. Like that's why. That's why I think that's why I think we see things the way that we see them. Because It's just it's not like you're on edge, but it's more just like your senses are, you're hyper aware of certain things. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, dude, it was a pleasure talking to you.
Dude,
it was
likewise,
great,
man. This was really fun.
Thanks for having me. This was really fun.
Dude, yeah, we should do it again sometime. But this was like super fun. I really enjoyed talking about everything from under the sun. This is kind of why I don't really put a specific limit on what we're gonna talk about, or time limit. I try to keep it to an hour, but sometimes you just have good ones like these, and it just goes, man. And
yeah, dude, if you ever want to come on, Is It Still Good? I'll hit you up. You start to think of some things that you grew up with, man. It can be anything. Food. It can be
okay.
Like what have we done? We've done hide and seek. We've done Happy Meals. We've done a Goofy movie.
Ooh.
Goosebumps. Pajama Day. We're trying to do like Eggo waffles. And anything that you can think of from your childhood, like an experience. Like it can be something as simple as like fighting with your parents, like literally like anything from your childhood.
But we got to try it out. So then we got to call our parents and fight with them.
Fight with them on air,
just to see.
But yeah, man, no, it was a pleasure, man. And say hi to Bella for me, man. She's lovely. I'm glad you guys are still together.
I will. She is lovely. I'm very lucky that she still finds something in me. And
hey, man, that's how I feel about Zoe. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Dude, yeah, okay, so I'll link everything below, so don't worry about that, but what's, like, the most recent thing you want to kind of point people towards? Anything going on? I know codes slow stuff down.
Probably, my podcast and my sketches. I'll send you, like, if you want, I can email you the website to the podcast and my Vimeo page or something like that.
Great, yeah, Vimeo would be great, so they could see all your stuff. Because I actually am going to weed through some more stuff that I hadn't seen.
For sure, and I'll Revenge Tour's private, but I'll send you like the password for it.
Okay, awesome. Is Revenge Tour something you're trying to make into a bigger thing? It's not.
Yes, we're talking with the studio. I can't really say much, but we're in talks with like a couple people, and it's it's definitely looking. We're optimistic, but obviously with the times being what they are, you can't really get your hopes up about anything.
No worries, but I just want to make sure, because that sounded really interesting. I want to point people towards it, but they'll just have to be on the edge of their seat.
Yeah.
Be satiated with what they can find on your Vimeo.
For sure.
And all your other socials that I'll link.
For sure.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. We'll end it here.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Once more. With reading. Try that again.